of speed, color, drama, and excitement. The American Sports Cavalcade. I'm Steve Evans. What you have just seen is one of the most spectacular drag racing incidents in recent memory. It was R.C. Sherman living one of the most frightening experiences that a funny car driver can have. A car completely and totally out of control. As always, the NHRA Safety Safari was on the scene immediately. The jaws of life had cut away the roll cage. The NHRA emergency team administered treatment to an alert but visibly shaken R.C. Sherman. Sherman was carefully moved to the waiting ambulance and on to the hospital for x-rays. Happily, aside from bruises and a sprained hand, he was all right. The same, though, could not be said for the race car. It was a total loss. In replay, we see R.C. Sherman of Maryland in the near lane. This was qualifying for the Citgo Cajun Nationals in Baton Rouge here at State Capitol Dragway. Sherman's car slowly veered to the right, out of the racing lane, into the marbles, the loose rubber. There it lost traction. It headed to the left. Sherman trying to regain control, but it is not to be. He appears to have come very close to the wall, maybe have brushed it. Suddenly a right turn, throttle wide open into the rail. The body exits the machine, the parachute lines acting like an umbilical cord to the chassis as Sherman tumbles down the racetrack. From yet another angle, R.C. Sherman on the right side of your screen. Losing traction, billowing tire smoke, trying to control the car right there. The body touches the guardrail. It shifts and holds the throttle wide open.
Well, the car left the line and it felt like it was on a pretty good run, and then it went right a little bit, and then I remember it smoking the tires. And when it smoked the tires, it got a little crooked toward the left guardrail, and I lifted, and when I lifted, it was like I didn't lift. It might have come back to half throttle, or it might have stuck at full throttle. I can't really remember. I went into the left guardrail at a pretty shallow angle, and I was trying to steer it down the racetrack because I figured if I can just keep it in the racetrack, I can do something to get it stopped. But I couldn't keep the car out of the left guardrail. And then once it hit the left guardrail, then it was out of control. And I remembered, the last thing I remember was seeing the right guardrail coming. When I look out of the windshield, I saw the right guardrail coming straight at me, and I knew I was flying. And I said, this isn't going to be pretty. And then I don't remember a thing after that until they were trying to get me out of the car.
Whoa. After seeing that with R.C. Sherman, it's time to sit down in the air conditioning and take a deep breath. And no better place to do that than in this incredible lounge built into the front of the #1 Funny Car Qualifiers trailer, Don the Snake Prudhomme. Now, most of the drivers, the full-time pros anyway, consider this kind of a facility now to be a necessity, not a luxury. And I might add that their wives agree. But a lot of the old hardline mechanics, they consider these kind of a nuisance. You know what I mean? A guy like Austin Coyle, crew chief for John Brute Force. In fact, Paul Page is over at John Force's trailer to show us the business end where Austin lives and works.
Well, Steve, by contrast, the truck used by John Force, his crew chief Austin Coyle and the team, about 15 years old, doesn't have any plush carpeting, there's no wood panel on the walls. This baby is made for business. Now, of course, the funny car fits in the back end, but up here in the front section is all the equipment you could ever possibly want. Your parts washer. Down underneath here is your welding equipment. Spare motors are stacked underneath the workbench. Grinding equipment galore. As a matter of fact, if you want your valves ground, well, that can be done right here. A bandsaw, a high-tech contribution, the computer. This is where the data is taken out of the car, displayed up here, and Austin Coyle can decide what changes he may want on the next run. In short, anything that you may want to do to a race car can be done right here. Steve?
Well, I've been ousted from my air-conditioned refuge here because Don Prudhomme and crew have had to take their funny car to the staging lanes for round number 2. Now, when they get there, as you know, Paul, they will not find John Force because all of Austin Coyle's work was for naught in the back of that trailer. It was John Force smoking the tires earlier today in round number 1 against Mark Oswald. Oswald has advanced. Right now, let's go to Big Daddy Don Garlits on the starting line and see how he sees the day.
Steve, it's hot today. The temperature is in the mid-90s, headed for 100 degrees. And besides that, it's very humid, a condition that makes it very difficult for these teams to make horsepower. Add that to the fact that this sun baking down on this racing surface, it's sticky, but it does not have the ability to keep the tire from spinning. So the teams, some of the better ones, have misjudged this racing surface and caused the tires to lose traction. And as the insiders would say, the cars have went up in smoke. The race today is going to be won over there in the pits by the crew chief and the crews, and how they set the tricky clutch, that dual stage clutch that comes in at different points down the racetrack, and whether or not it's going to gain traction or lose traction. And it's going to be very difficult to deal with this hot racing surface.
Well, thank you, Big Daddy, and we are ready to run at the Cajun Nationals from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We pick up in Top Fuel, round number 2, as Dennis Forcell is ready to take on Darrell Gwynn.
The Citgo Cajun Nationals is the 6th stop on the 19-race NHRA Winston Drag Racing Series Tour, and Darrell Gwynn has notched one of those victories. The Gator Nationals in March down in Florida. Dennis Forcell, accomplishing the burnout here, is still looking for victory lane.
Well, you know, Steve, Darrell almost didn't get into this show. It wasn't until the final qualifying session Saturday night that he made the show, but he did get into the top half of the field, so he does have lane choice this morning.
And lane choice on a racetrack like this, as Big Daddy said earlier, with the heat and the humidity, conditions can be ever-changing. It's something you'd always like to have in your pocket if you possibly can. Dennis Forcell, a businessman racer from Minneapolis, Minnesota, was a standout in the sportsman category of top alcohol dragsters for years. His crew chief is Larry Frazier, and periodically throughout the show, we'll be chatting with the crew chiefs right on the starting line. Darrell Gwynn from Miami, Florida, 27 years of age, a full-time pro, a bright young man, with a new crew chief this year, Ken Vinny. They qualified number 8, as Don said, but barely on that last shot did they do it.
And Darrell Gwynn is currently 2nd in the point standing for Top Fuel, behind Gary Ormsby, the current points leader. And Darrell Gwynn is also the defending champion here at the Cajuns.
That's right, Paul. In fact, he pulled off a hat trick last year, winning 3 in a row, and one of them was right here. There is Larry Frazier, crew chief for Dennis Forcell, leaning in. Don, what's he doing?
He's looking in there, going to turn on that switch that starts the computer running. Just as Dennis will stage in the first beam, he will turn the switch on and step back out of the way.
They're ready. Green light. An incredible drag race. And the winner is Darrell Gwynn at 5:23 to Dennis Forcell's quicker 5.22. Down on the starting line with the winning chief mechanic is Big Daddy Don Garlits. Don?
Didn't do quite as well as we thought. We wanted to run about a 20. But it's just so hot that we just touched a little bit. We didn't want to mess up. We knew he could run good. We stepped on him just a little bit, but not quite enough. We're plenty happy to win. Our boy did a good job. He left on him, and that's perfect.
Good luck.
Well, the difference really occurred back at the starting line. Gwynn got away just a little bit quicker, and it paid off down at the far end. Let's take a look at it one more time, Don Garlits.
Note that Darrell's car moves first, just ever so slightly, but it was just what he needed because Forcell made the better run with the 5.22. But it's who leaves that line first usually in drag racing. It's so close today. Notice how tight the cars are together as they come down the racetrack. Forcell actually gains back a little bit with his 274 charge, but it wasn't enough.
So Darrell Gwynn picks up the win in round number 2. Let's go to the far end and Steve.
Well, this win will be especially sweet for Darrell Gwynn because, Darrell, you helped a lot behind the steering wheel. Your 5.23 beat Dennis's 5.22.
Well, I'll tell you, I knew Dennis was going to be right there. He's a heck of a racer, and I owed him one here in Baton Rouge. Even though we've beat him 5 or 6 times since he's been racing, I was really worried about him. He's a heck of a competitor, and I was really worried about him beating me.
Could you see him coming into that last timing trap?
The entire way I saw him, Steve. Inches. I just inched him out about half track on.
Even though you're going 270, 280 miles an hour, when you're that close to another car, does it almost seem slow motion?
Well, it does, you know, because you're kind of looking over at the other car, and the other car's going the same speed as you. Yeah. But, you know, we ain't got time to be waving to the girls. We're just concentrating on driving these cars.
Okay, well, 2 more rounds, and you can wave to the girls.
Thank you very much.
Well, Darrell Gwynn advances with a very close decision over Dennis Forcell. In the meantime, back up at the staging lanes, here comes Dick LaHaye, but he is late in his attempt to take out Frank Bradley. Bradley, you can see, already strapped into the car. And when you look at LaHaye's car, they're still working on the clutch. We'll be back with that run from the Cajun Nationals right after this.
Outside of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, for our coverage of the NHRA Citgo Cajun Nationals. You're looking at the crew of Mike Dunn working on that funny car. They've got a bit more time. There's Mike just kind of looking on. Normally, he's a very active part of this crew, a hard-working young driver. He'll face off with Whit Bazemore in funny car round number 2, but right now it's time for the next race in round 2 of Top Fuel. I'm Steve Evans, along with Paul Page and Don Garlitz.
At the Cajun Nationals out of Baton Rouge, and Dick LaHaye finally made his appearance on the line and climbed into the car. Whatever they were working on, it looked like the clutch apparently is fixed now, and he is ready to face Frank Bradley as LaHaye makes his burnout. Bradley was a little bit miffed at the fact that LaHaye came up late.
Yes, he was. And Don Garlitz, when you have to work this hard in the heat like Dick LaHaye did, that can't be a positive thing.
No, it's not positive. In fact, any of this is very unpositive, very negative, in fact, because you're strapped in these cars, you're hot, you're just not thinking right. It'd be amazing to me if Frank Bradley's not an hour early or an hour late.
You know, down at the far end, the drivers get out of the cars, even on a nice, pleasant day, and they're perspiring, they're breathing heavily. I think that they forget to breathe in these cars, Don, when they're going through the burnout and backup process.
You don't breathe very much. In fact, as you go up to the stage, you hold your breath for the whole rest of the race.
And I think we just saw a little bit of that tension and some of that fatigue on the face of Kim LaHaye. Her father, Dick LaHaye, was a 1987 Winston Top Fuel champion out of Lansing, Michigan, and Kim, his award-winning crew chief. This young lady is just a wizard with the wrenches in Top Fuel. Now, Frank Bradley makes most of the tuning decisions himself, but the man who executes so well is his crew chief, Kim Connerty. We also might want to mention here that it was Dick LaHaye who eliminated the #1 qualifier, Frank Cook, back in round number 1. A man, a real veteran at this racetrack with a spindly old car, picked up a lot of bonus money qualifying #1, but his dream of victory went out a bit earlier today.
We have a very hot day, a very humid day in Baton Rouge. Don Garlitz, what kind of changes you have to make on the car when that happens to you?
Well, it's very difficult to burn this nitromethane because it doesn't have enough oxygen in the air, too much water.
They're away. It was LaHaye who moved first, near lane. And the win like calls it for Dick LaHaye. Kim, I think, had her doubts there for a minute, as I'm sure her father did, as he ran a 5.22-second elapsed time to Bradley's quicker 5:19, the second whole shot in a row, Paul.
But, of course, what makes the difference is who gets to the far end first. In this case, it was Dick LaHaye. You notice as they come off the line, LaHaye did move a lot faster in the whole shot. Then Bradley got going, and LaHaye drifted over toward the center line just a bit. Coming to the finish, LaHaye's whole shot paid off. Bradley is right there, but LaHaye got to the finish line about 3 feet ahead of Bradley. That despite the fact that Bradley ran a quicker quarter mile. Here's Steve.
Well, we talk so much about all of the technology in these cars, all the money that is spent on them, the talented crew chiefs. But in the first 2 races here in the second round, it is boiled down to the men that drive them. The second hole shot this time, your 22 beats Frank's 19.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you, Steve. We needed something. We've been struggling all weekend here and can't get a hold of this racetrack. And thank the Lord he was with my reflexes.
You know, you were still working on the car in the staging lanes. It looked like quite a family thrash.
Well, the thing that happened was there was a clutch change being made and a part got dropped down inside the bell housing and we couldn't get it out. And couldn't find it, and you know that we can't run it for safety factors with a piece flying around inside of there, and we had to find it. That's what the holdup was.
Well, it all paid off for you. Great driving.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Well, that had to drive the crew a little frantic back there, and you're talking a family operation. The eyes, of course, belong to Laurie Johns. Top Fuel, round number 2, as Laurie is ready to face Frank Hawley.
And who taught Laurie Johns how to drive a high-powered drag racing machine? Well, the man in the other lane, Frank Hawley, the owner of the drag racing school down in Florida. Hawley now back into full-time drag racing, driving the top fuel dragster of Larry Minor. Interesting combination, Don.
I guess the big question here is the teacher going to get a lesson from the student, Steve?
Well, Frank Hawley, a two-time funny car champion, yet to score big with the top fuel dragster. His crew chief is Bill Walter. This is a new combination. They're just kind of working out the bugs, driver and crew. Now, earlier, though, in round number 1, this man, Gary Ormsby, Roseville, California, who has won 3 of the 5 NHRA drag races so far, thanks to a lot of help from his crew chief, Lee Beard. Well, he experienced something, this was earlier today, that has not happened to this race car since it was manufactured, since it debuted back in February in Pomona at the Winter Nationals. It smoked the tires. This car has been glued to every racetrack, and that's good news for the competition, Don Garlett.
And that 514 he just turned is bad news for the competition.
Well, 2 things happened here in the first round in that race. Gary Ormsby, for the first time in the history of that race car, all year long smoked the tires, and you, Frank Hawley, are now the quickest guy in the place at 514.
Well, you know, John and Willie and Mark and Kelly and the guys we haven't been real heroes the last few weeks, and they've been working at it steady, and I think that's one of the keys. We went into the first round with not what we really thought would be a low ET combination. We just wanted to be consistent, and it turned out a little better than we thought, so we're going to try round 2 now.
Well, round number 1 was a fairly interesting confrontation for Lori Johns as well. She qualified number 6 with a 520. Her crew chief, of course, is Larry Meyer. The car really performing well, took on one of the big guns in the sport, Eddie Hill, who was surprisingly the 14th qualifier. That car, of course, is controlled by Fuzzy Carter. They put their car on the line against Johns. I think almost everybody would have bet for Eddie Hill, but take a look at what happened.
Eddie Hill was off the mark first by only 1/100th of a second, though. And imagine there's 30 years difference in age between these 2 drivers. And at the far end, Lori Johns won it with a 5:26 to Eddie Hill's disappointed 5.29 seconds. That's how Lori Johns got to this point. Well, to Lori Johns right now, I don't think there's any heat. There's no humidity. There's only the thrill of beating Eddie Hill.
That's right, Eddie the Thrill Hill. He'll always give you one, won't he?
Well, you gave him one, a 5:26.
Oh, my God. That's just fantastic. I was a little nervous about that one, and you can imagine why. But Larry Meyer, my crew chief, said we hopped her up for you, Lori.
Boy,
I'm happy.
And that victory brings Lori Johns into round 2 of Top Fuel to face Frank Hawley. Hawley over in the far lane, Lori Johns in the near lane, and we've seen some mighty close Top Fuel racing. Will it happen again? Hawley gets the advantage off of the line, and Frank Hawley picks up the win.
Only by 1/100th of a second, a 5:33 to a 5:34. But Hawley very alert off the mark, and that made the margin of victory even greater. Don?
Fell off with a 33, Willie. What do you think?
Dropped the cylinder on the line. We got a little too much barrel valve in it to cool it off at idle, and it's a little too wet and dripping fuel in front of the tire, and dropped that hole, Don.
Okay, Don, you want to give us a translation of that one?
The motor was too rich, and fuel come out of the pipes and was getting under the tires.
So the fuel getting on the tires causing the tires to slip. Boy, he could have lost that one. Here is Connie Coletta, fired up, ready to go. Top Fuel, round number 2, and he will face Gene Snow.
The crew chief, Chris Eckert, indicates to the crewman there that there's a fuel leak. You can see the fuel sloshing out of the barrel valve. Gene Snow is going to go ahead and make the burnout, though.
But you know, the starting line crew, under the direction of Chief Starter Buster Couch, they're very sensitive to things like fuel leaks. A fuel leak, in many ways, not as bad as an oil leak, because the fuel tends to evaporate in the air, but it's something they're going to have to get a handle on, or that car may not leave the starting line.
Yeah, because Buster does have the right to shut the car off anytime he likes.
And Gene Snow, in fact, neither driver accomplished a particularly good burnout. Well, there he is. That's the face of the only man in drag racing to ever top 290 miles per hour. He did it this year with some help from this man, crew chief Mike Garrison. They qualified number 7, Coletta and crew. And Gene Snow, a man who may have a problem out there from Fort Worth, Texas. Snow is the man who debuted the high gear only setup at this race a year ago, along with a lot of help from his crew chief, Chris Eckert. And now there is not a qualified top fuel car, Don Garlett, with a transmission. And here we see the old rag trick.
Well, you can actually see the fuel dripping out of the injector down there, and they're putting, see it? Look at it running. That could be quite a bit of a problem. It's a small O-ring in there is causing this problem, and it dries out and allows that fuel to come by. Buster Couch is motioning the crew to get away from the car.
And they launch at Coletta with a giant wheel stand as Gene Snow rockets through the trap. with a 5:30. Coletta totally out of the ballpark as he picks the front wheels up off the ground at the starting line and then still spins the rear tires. Let's take a look at this, Big Daddy.
We see Coletta immediately leave the line. The wheels come up, unload the rear tires, and he goes into smoke and lifts very quickly. It was a good thing, too, because Snow had some trouble with all that barrel valve fooling around on the starting line. He dropped the cylinder, and the performance of the car fell off to a 5:30.
So as a result of action in the second round of Top Fuel, Dick LaHaye will face Gene Snow. LaHaye will have lane choice, and Frank Hawley will take on Darrell Gwynn. Gwynn will have his choice of lanes here at the Cajun Nationals.
Well, a nice 5:30 and a giant wheel stand on the part of Connie Coletta puts this man, Gene Snow, into the semifinals. But, Gene, what was going on? Your crew was pointing to something on the dashboard, the instrument panel.
Oh, there was something back behind. I don't know. There was a fuel leak. Yeah, there's a rag. There was a fuel leak, and that's what they were trying to stop was the fuel leak. We turned the clutch on in here, and we checking that to be sure that was on, but I guess there was a fuel leak. I saw him do the wheel stand. He was about this high right beside me.
You know, you deserve this. You've had a couple of frustrating months.
It has been real tough. I tell you, it makes a guy want to quit sometimes, and something like this pumps you all back up again. We're ready.
It bumps me up, too, to see you do well.
Well, back in the funny car pits, here's John Martin's crew working on his machine as he prepares to face young Scott Coletta.
You can plainly see the crack in the aluminum differential housing in the Whit Bazemore funny car. That is going to prevent Whit from being in the staging lanes to meet Mike Dunn in the second round. Welcome back, everyone, to State Capitol Dragway. I'm Steve Evans, along with Paul Page and Don Garlitz. Normally, the crew chief on this car, Gary Evans, when they break a ring and pinion, which is what happened, would just replace that unit and they'd race. But that crack in that housing means they can't do it, and they don't have a spare rear end, and nobody's really going to loan them one because everybody needs all the parts they have in case they should break the very same thing. For Mike Dunn, well, I guess he's relieved, huh? They won't have to work quite as hard getting that car ready for the third round. Paul?
Mike Dunn certainly picks up the advantage. He has a bye run, but of course, he still wants to run it as hard as he can. He takes a little dry hop, Don.
Well, that means he's got a 2-speed transmission, and that kind of puts him back into the dark ages, but the car runs real well. A couple of other interesting things about this car: it has no computer on it and very little electronics. Mike Dunn actually has his own brake lockup if he wants to apply brakes a little bit to start with to help stop it from spinning the wheels. Also, he shifts the transmission, and he starts the clutch lockup.
And with all those supposed handicaps, Mike Dunn of Ontario, California, won this year's Southern Nationals. And the crew chief on that car, Gary Slusher, who has been around drag racing as long as there has been drag racing. So it's a single run for Mike Dunn. I bet he goes all out, Don.
Sure he will, because he's going to want lane choice. You know, he may be the last driver left in drag racing.
Oh, and the car smokes the tires horribly. That will probably cost him lane choice. But sometimes on a single run, the driver, the crew figures, well, we can experiment a little bit. We can find out just exactly how much a particular lane of the racetrack will take because we can't lose. Don is at the line.
Well, what do you think? It smoked him out there pretty good.
Yeah, just too much clutch in it right now for that round.
So that's exactly what they were doing. They wanted to find out how much clutch they could use in that far lane. At that point, a little too much. So now they'll go back and make the adjustment. Here's the #1 qualifier, Don Prudhomme, who has lane choice, and he's decided for that far lane as he comes up to face Bruce Larson.
And they are in a big hurry, this crew. Bruce Larson didn't start his car until after Don Prudhomme had done his burnout. Larson, a true sporting kind of a racer, does not want to inconvenience Prudhomme. Worse yet, Don Garlitz, he does not want to be accused of a burn down, getting the other driver's engine too hot.
And you know, Don Prudhomme is very sensitive about that. He doesn't like to think that the guys are trying to burn him down, or else he'll burn them down.
Well, the difference of maybe 20 or 30 degrees in water temperature could mean a few extra 100 horsepower, which you don't need on this racetrack. The Pontiac body car you're looking at, Don the Snake Prudhomme, the #1 qualifier. He had a single in round 1 because of the R.C. Sherman incident. He would have faced Sherman, his crew chief, a young guy out of the San Fernando Valley, Mike Clover. Now, Bruce Larson, winner at the Winter Nationals, runner-up on 2 other occasions. He is the Winston points leader, but he's seeing that advantage being whittled away at. Maynard Yingst, his crew chief, has worked as hard as anybody this year because they have broken a tremendous amount of parts.
So Bruce Larson back up in position. The escape hatch finally closed. Don Prudhomme in the far lane. Qualified #1 with a 5:38.
Then he came back pole in the first round, run 5:43, which was the low of the round. So he's very strong today.
And he did that on a single run, unopposed. You're right. The Snake has got a handle on this racetrack and on the weather. All the years as a touring professional all across the country, all kinds of conditions have really paid off for Don Prudhomme and Bruce Larson, for that matter. Larson just really achieved superstar status last year in NHRA drag racing. His first major victory came right here, and he may get another one. No. Don Prudhomme by a clean car length at another fine 5:44 to a losing 5.50. Let's go to Don at the starting line.
5:44 is the Snake on a mark.
We actually wanted to run a little better than that, but it's hot out. We're satisfied with that, and I have to give a lot of credit to our crew. We don't have any stars on our crew with the exception of Snake, and it's just a real big team effort from all of us. We're real happy to be here and go this far, and hopefully we'll see you guys in the final.
So Mike Klober goes to join the rest of his crew for the ride down to the far end to pick up Don Prudhomme and begin preparations for their next round in funny car. Ken Veeney and the crew working on Darrell Gwynn's car as they prepare for the semifinal round in Top Fuel. Let's go to Steve.
Don, that was a terrific drive. You had him off the mark by about 400s, but you really didn't need the whole shot with a 5:44.
Well, you need the whole shot against all of them if you can. And usually I'm not there, but I've been trying pretty hard on the starting line and, you know, getting the car worked out, too.
And who will face Darrell Gwynn? Well, none other than Frank Holly in the Top Fuel semifinal round.
We're back in Baton Rouge for the NHRA Citgo Cajun Nationals. In the Top Fuel pits, well, Gene Snow's crew is having a unique experience of late. They're not looking at a blown-up motor. Rather, when it's reassembled, a power plant that should be ready to face off with Dick LaHaye in the Top Fuel semifinals. Right now, action continuing in the second round of Funny Car.
Out on the starting line, round number 2 of Funny Car, Ed McCullough takes on Mark Oswald.
And an interesting side note, in this heavy heat this afternoon, Ed McCullough's crew changed the motor. They took a shot. You know, this could slow them down or speed them up. No one knows till they actually go down the racetrack.
For Mark Oswald in the red Ford Probe, the 1984 Winston Champ, the car based nearby in Houma, Louisiana. The crew chief is Leonard Hughes. He can not only set low ET for you, he can show you where all the bass are hanging out in the bayous. For Ed McCullough, well, he has lane choice here. Don mentioned the engine change. This could be interesting. Crew chief is Bernie Federle. There's none better. A quiet man with an awful lot of talent. They qualified in the number 6 position.
Well, here in the far lane, Oswald has to be the choice of the fans, the hometown choice here. McCullough, though, can really strike quick and fast and take a victory away from Oswald.
You know, Paul, Candy's Hughes has never won here in front of the hometown fans.
And they're not going to today, as Ed McCullough, a stunning 546, 269 miles per hour. Mark Oswald was off the mark first, but his 557 wasn't even close.
You're looking good, Bernie, with that 46. Finally got her to come around, huh?
Yeah, I'm a little impressed with that in the heat of the day. That's been our best shot to this point, and I just hope we can repeat. It spun just a little bit, but, you know, if things firm up a little in a while, we might be all right. I'm thinking we're looking a lot better all of a sudden.
Good.
Well, you heard it from Bernie Federle. The heat definitely a factor, and the temperatures are still climbing. Now, as we take a look, Mark Oswald actually moved first. He left the line ahead of McCullough.
But not for long. The new motor that the McCullough crew put in evidently was making a lot of horsepower in this heat. Found a good combination for this afternoon, and you can just keep it. Just kept right on charging. Ran a 269-mile-an-hour top speed.
Let's go to Steve.
Well, Ed McCullough, you have silenced the hometown fans for the Candies and Hughes team with a nice 546. That's right in there.
Well, you know, more power to the Candies guys. You know, I mean, they're a great bunch of guys. I'm sorry we're in their home turf, but we needed to beat them. You know, we worked too hard for this round. We had to change motors after the first round, so the crew, Bernie and Corey and Chris and all the guys jumped in and got the motor changed, and it worked fine.
So the hometown nemesis strikes Mark Oswald once again. Continuing in round 2 of Funny Car, there was Scott Coletta as he's ready to take on John Martin. Martin had the lane choice coming into this round. He decided the near lane, a little bit brighter.
Well, it depends on your particular combination and how you like to run your car as to which lane you're in. And if you're winning in a lane, you tend to try to stay there if at all possible, even though it may not be popular with the competition. Scott Coletta, one of the few funny car drivers. In fact, only he and Mike Dunn have ever topped 280 miles per hour in one of these cars. And maybe the reason is the crew chief is the fastest driver ever at 290, his father, Johnny Coletta. John Martin, an independent team from San Dimas, California, do a tremendous job and get a lot of help from this young man, Jim Brock, a second-generation drag racer.
Now, how did Martin get to this round? Well, he got here by facing the world champion Kenny Bernstein. Bernstein and the machine obviously controlled by the genius of Dale Armstrong. Qualified number 4 with a 550. But this was back at round number 1 as Martin came up to face Kenny Bernstein.
Now watch carefully as Bernstein executed the burnout. Right there, you can see some parts and pieces underneath the car, oil under the tires. I talked to Kenny right after this incident in the pits. Well, Kenny, this crew was on such a tremendous high after winning in Memphis, pulling within less than 300 points of Bruce Larson, and to lose a motor on a burnout. Ooh.
Yeah, you know, I don't think we've done that, Dale Armstrong and I, since we've been together on a wet burnout. That's a terrible feeling. I hope we never do that again.
Do you know what caused it?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it hydraulic the cylinder. Now, why it hydraulic the cylinder, we don't know that. Dale's got a lot of work to do, he said, on the flow bench, and he doesn't want to take anything else apart until he can put it on the bench and see if something malfunctioned. But that's what happened. It hydraulic the cylinder.
And that means the cylinder fills up with fuel, and you can't compress fuel like you do air.
No, it fills up with fuel, and it lights at the wrong time, and it explodes, and, of course, everything goes to shambles when that happens. And that's basically it.
Thanks, Kenny.
All right, appreciate it.
Some mighty expensive holes in that engine, and it was to the good fortune of John Martin, who was able to move to this round number 2, ready to face Scott Coletta.
One thing you know when you race Scott Coletta is if he's behind you, he may not stay there for long, because this car makes a tremendous charge the last 400 or 500 feet.
Yeah, that's one of the last things they always tell the driver facing Scott. Don't shut off early. He may be right there.
Yep, and there is Coletta, but he's got too much power on this day. The right lane again becomes a bit suspicious. Up in smoke goes Coletta. Martin wins it at 5.71 seconds, 249 miles per hour. Not the best run of the day, but it did get him to the semifinal round. And Don is with his crew chief, Jim Prock. Don?
Well, a 571, not the best, but you're still in there.
Yeah, we got a little lucky first round. I think we had a clutch problem that time, but we'll fix it. We'll be back.
So Martin's victory sets the stage for the semifinal round in Funny Car, where John Martin will face Ed the Ace McCullough. McCullough will have lane choice. And Mike Dunn will take on Don Perdone. The Snake will have his choice of lanes. We'll be back with more from Louisiana.
I'm about to test a fiber that's...
We're back at the NHRA Citgo Cajun Nationals just outside Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where it is sweltering hot. I'm Paul Page with Don Garlitz and Steve Evans, who's down in the hot pits.
NHRA official Lex Dudas is in Frank Hawley's pit. Frank is saying, I'll be there on time. I will be in the car. Now, what's happened here is, first of all, they were overjoyed. They found their performance problem. The line from the blower to the computer had fallen off, hence reducing the boost. Then they got the whole thing together, and in the bell housing, the throwout bearing that operates the clutch phases fell off. They heard it go funk in the bell housing. So the bell housing had to come back off of the engine, the entire clutch be reassembled. We ran over here just in time to catch this, you guys. But Hawley is confident he'll make it into the lanes. In fact, he's trying to help the crew out with some of the last-minute details himself, something he usually doesn't do.
But they do have a full-bore thrash underway in Hawley's pits. In the meantime, out on the line, we're ready for some of the closest drag racing in NHRA. It's the Pro Stock, as Kenny Delco is ready to take on Butch Leal.
You're right, Paul. This is definitely a category that has the fans right on the edge of their seat. Sometimes in the 16-car field from 1st to 16th might not be more than 2 or 3/100ths of a second. This is Kenny Delco, a New Yorker who in round number 1 defeated Mark Powick. He's up against the whole shot artist Butch Leal from Blacklick, Ohio, who knocked Don Beverly out of the program earlier today in the initial round. These are a pair of Pontiac Trans Ams, 500 cubic inches, 4-speed transmissions, racing gasoline pouring through 2 huge 4-barrel carburetors.
Kenny Delco draws a red light, trying to get a starting line advantage over the ever-quick Butch Leo, but it's to no avail, giving Butch Leo the race.
That's right. If those front wheels leave that electronic beam before the green light circuit is complete, you automatically get a red, and you are automatically out of here. Okay, here is the next pair in Pro Stock eliminations. We're in round number 2. Bruce Allen in the far lane in the Chevrolet Beretta, and he will be up against a resurgent Ricky Smith. Smith, for a season or two, tried to emulate Bob Glidden with a Ford Thunderbird, just could not win a race. His career was in real trouble. He went back to the General Motors Power, and he is A-OK. Bruce Allen qualified in the #1 position, and he is also the defending champion. 7.41 seconds, and he beat Frank Iaconio in round number 1. Now, earlier today, it was this man, Ricky Smith, who defeated Warren Johnson's Oldsmobile. Smith qualified in the 13th spot at 7:48. So here, 1 to 13, Don Garlits, is only 7/100 of a second.
That's incredible. It gives them a chance. Anybody can win in this Pro Stock.
Now, who's going to win this one? It is Ricky Smith near lane in the Trans Am, the Beretta in the far lane of Bruce Allen. It is no contest. The Texas team of Rare and Morrison, the yellow and white Beretta, win it at 7:55 to a losing 7:68.
And Allen at 183 miles an hour. That's making a lot of horsepower considering the tremendously high temperatures here in Louisiana today. Now on the line, Joe Fulgore and Ken Koretsky, the Trans Am versus the Beretta.
Joe Fulgore was one of the slower qualifiers, in fact, in the 15th position. But still, his 7:49 in round number 1 beat the popular Dodge of Darrell Alderman. Quite an upset there. Kenny Koretsky qualified 11th at 7:48. And you talk about your upsets. Bob Glidden, who has won 4 out of 5 Pro Stock races this year, the many-time Winston champ from Whiteland, Indiana. Glidden was in the near lane. Koretsky was over on the far side. Koretsky had been bragging a little bit earlier, maybe just building his own confidence, and he would beat Glidden, something hardly anyone has done this year, and Kenny Koretsky has never done. We were on board with Bob Glidden. Now look to the right. There goes the yellow car. Koretsky. Glidden shuts it off with some problem. Kenny Koretsky, one of the biggest upsets of the year so far in Winston drag racing. Well, here's a young man who has been struggling to make it as a Pro Stock racer. You've never been cocky before, but this morning you were saying, I'm going to beat Glidden, I'm going to beat him, and you did.
Well, I had nothing to lose and everything to gain, and just went for it to tree. The car shook, and just drove it on through.
You knew that this string would come to an end ultimately, but I don't think even you thought it would be in the first round of a national event.
Well, you never know about that, Steve. Anyone who qualifies can certainly win the race, and on a track that's as treacherous as this track is, you never know what's going to happen.
Even though Koretsky had a pretty sizable hole shot, it appeared at first that you had the performance to make up for that.
You know, apparently when he jumped in, the tree came on. We were both late, of course, and I was extremely late, but it would not have mattered. Our car moved 3 or 4 feet and went into violent shake. So it wouldn't have mattered what had happened on the starting line.
Surprisingly, Glidden out in round 1, and Kenny Koretsky is really pumped as he inches up to take on Joe Fulgore.
So it's a Trans Am in the far lane, the Beretta in the near lane. The RPMs come up to over 7,000, between 7,000 and 8,000, and away they go. Kenny Koretsky, maybe still operating on a bit of an adrenaline high after the Glidden upset has red lighted. He foul started. Joe Fulgore gets there first anyway at 7:66. So Kenny Koretsky in the yellow Beretta had his moment in the spotlight, but now the humbling occurrence of losing on a foul start. He heads back to the trailer. We continue with Pro Stock.
And at the starting line, the Trans Am of Morris Johnson is ready to face this car, the Oldsmobile of Larry Morgan.
And you just saw that tire melting burnout. They sit there stationary for a few seconds before they release the line lock that holds the front brakes and crawl away from that smoke. It's a wonder they don't blow these tires right off of the wheels, the kind of heat that they create. Morris Johnson Jr., he's been in the NHRA National Event Victory Circle from Richmond, Virginia with his Trans Am. And here's Larry Morgan, who's a supreme engine builder and is making a lot of power with the Oldsmobile power plant. So it'll be Morgan in the near lane, and Mojo Jr., as some call him, including yours truly, will be in the far lane. That's a good matchup here. And a good, clean staging process. They both move up, get all 4 lights on, and away they go. Morgan in the Olds, Johnson the Trans Am. It is Oldsmobile by 3/4 of a car length. Larry Morgan, 751, 183 miles per hour to a losing 754. So that will set up the pairings for the semifinal round in Pro Stock. Larry Morgan will have lane choice over Butch Leal. Lane choice not as important for the Pro Stock cars as it is with the nitro burners. Bruce Allen, what a day he's having. Joe Fulgore will be in the opposite lane when the two get together in the semis. Allen will have the lane choice.
Well, with the help of his wife, Claudia, Dick LaHaye gets ready for his semifinal matchup against Gene Snow. We're back at the NHRA Citgo Cajun Nationals, and in McCullough's pit, he's preparing for his contest against John Martin. Now, let's go to Steve Evans.
One of my favorite things to do about this time in the afternoon when I get a break is to check in National Drag Racing's leading news weekly and see how the tricky tipster is doing. You know, kind of like the racing form. They handicap the competition. The identity of the tipster in 20 years has never been told, and it's a good thing today. For example, his pick and top fuel, Gary Ormsby, 2-1, out of here, first round. Funny car eliminator, Kenny Bernstein, good pick usually, 2-1, out of here, first round. Pro Stock eliminator, Bob Glidden, well, who would bet against him? Should have on this day. He's headed for the airport. Even the second pick in Pro Stock, Warren Johnson, is gone. So the tips are not having quite as hot a day as we are. And that's just one of many features and informative pieces in 150 pages, about an average size for a National Dragster. And the only way you get Dragster in your mailbox every week is to join the National Heartland Association. Call this number on the screen, and they'll throw in, free of charge, a copy of Decade of Thrills, the multi-award-winning home video hosted by yours truly and Dom the Snake Prudhomme. It originally sold more than the membership price. So do it right now and become a member of NHRA, and you too can critique the tricky tipster before every national event. It's kind of fun. Well, we blew it this time.
Well, let's check him this time. Dick LaHaye is the tipster special, going off at 5-1, and he will face Gene Snow, who the tipster has in at 10-1.
Well, this will be a real good race because LaHaye is a picture of consistency, and Snow hasn't won a race this year. But Snow is subject to pulling him out of the bag. He makes a lot of power if he can hook it up.
So it is Dick LaHaye in the near lane, Gene Snow on the far side of the racetrack. Dick LaHaye, that picture of consistency, has smoked the tires, and Snow, who is prone to do that, has, oh, boy, what a pass, 5.16, 274 miles per hour.
I'll tell you, that's a fantastic ET at this time of the day on this racetrack. Gene Snow is dangerous.
So Gene Snow scores the victory, and that brings up the second pair in the semifinal round as Darrell Gwynn will face Frank Hawley. Now remember, Hawley had that tremendous thrash going, trying to get his clutch back in operating condition before he brought the car to the line. Now there is Gwynn. Good, solid burnout, and it looks like Hawley's in good shape as well.
Now remember, Hawley made that 5:14 earlier, so he is very capable of winning this race.
Hawley and Gwynn coming up, but for the moment, let's go to Steve at the far end.
Gene Snow with absolutely the most impressive single run of the entire Cajun Nationals. It's got to be 95 degrees, 90% humidity, and Snowman a 5.16.
Great, that's fantastic. It's been so long, guys. We haven't got past the first round this whole year till now, and now we're already past the third round. My crew and everybody's doing a great job, all my sponsors and everything. I really want to thank you.
And you know, there's no oil leaking out of this thing. The cylinder heads are still on it. The blower is still on, and that's unique lately too.
You bet. It's not dropping cylinders, and you know, we're really excited. Maybe we got a chance at this point thing. It's a long way to go, though.
Well, the odds seem to be against him, but maybe he does have a chance. Frank Hawley, after all that thrash on the clutch, on the line. Crew says he's ready to go. Darrell Gwynn on the near side.
This is going to be a really good race. Darrell Gwynn earlier recorded a 5.19 and Hawley with a 5.14. This is going to be a very tight race.
But the conditions have changed somewhat, Big Daddy. It's much hotter now.
Yeah, but it's going to be a reaction time. We're going to see who gets the good reaction here.
All right, we'll be watching for that. It is Hawley away first. Hawley by a mile, Gwynn with no traction. Frank Hawley, for the first time in his top fuel career, goes to a final round. 5.36, 274 miles per hour. Let's go to Don with his crew chief.
Well, 5.36, and you're still in there, Willie. Yeah, well, I guess we're getting a few gifts here and there, but we're working on it. And we maybe have something to go with this time. Last time we had a boost gauge split on us, and we didn't really know what happened. So we had to leave it alone and try to go over that, and I guess this is what we get. So we'll have it ready.
Well, Bill Walter is pumped up because he and the crew move into the final round of Top Fuel here at the Cajun National. Let's take a look at the pairings. It'll be Gene Snow facing Frank Hawley, and the Snowman will have the lane choice. Now let's go to Steve.
Frank Hawley, for the first time in his career, goes into a Top Fuel final round. And the thrash we saw back in the pits, those have got to be sweet-sounding words.
Well, yeah, I mean, the guys were working pretty hard, and we've had some dumb stuff go on, and that's... A lot of racers have said that before, but sometimes when things don't go very smoothly is when you do well at the races. And, you know, I expected Darrell to be a real tough round. They're excellent racers, and no matter how we won it, I'm glad that we're in...
5:36 is how you won it.
Yeah, well, we definitely have a problem. We haven't found it, so whatever happened, we're going to have to find it for the final if we expect to win it.
Okay, we'll let you go.
So there may be some pressure in Hawley's pit. Not so back at Butch Leal's car. They're so ready, they're just waxing the car in the Louisiana heat. They're ready to face Morgan. And then in Bruce Allen's pit area, well, he knows how to deal with the heat here today. Nice big fans and a real
dragway where action continues in the NHRA Citgo Cajun Nationals drag races. I'm Steve Evans along with Paul Page and Big Daddy Don Garlitz, and that's the back end of Ed McCullough's funny car as he prepares to face off with John Martin. The funny car semifinals are beginning.
Ed McCullough, one of the odds-on favorites here with that 5:46 in the previous round. Crewman adjusting a parachutes there just a little bit. Got to be very careful if these chutes work properly. This is a short track, and they don't want to get these cars down in the rough.
Well, plus, if you get in trouble even at half track, get sideways. That parachute, if you can get it out in time, can straighten that car out. They're a dual-purpose safety feature on these funny cars for sure. John Martin, well, this is big time for him. He's only been to one final round before, has never been victorious. Ed the Ace McCullough, well, has a long, long list of NHRA victories. McCullough in the near lane, inching forward. They use a handbrake inside that cockpit. They're away. It is Martin in front. McCullough has engine problems. It is John Martin going to the finals. 564, 259 miles per hour. And on some racetracks like this one today, too much horsepower can be your enemy. Don's with Jim Prock.
Well, 564, and you're still in there, Jim.
Yeah, we've been trying not to beat ourselves all day, and we'll take them as we can get them, and we'll see what we can do for the final.
You know, Jim Prock grew up around racetracks, even as a small baby. Let's take a look at this run one more time. McCullough the near lane, Martin in the far lane. And Martin got a good jump on McCullough as they came off the line.
Well, we see the smoke, and we see the black track on McCullough's car. And then we see the flash, which means McCullough must have got a head gasket, and that was the end of his car for the day.
Well, how about John Martin? Right into the final round. Another great leave. You were out on him. He had some problems and threw in the towel, and you won it with a 564. A little bit of an improvement.
Well, we're trying. That's all I can say. We're just so happy to be here. It did something stupid down here at the other end, and I don't know what it was, but...
It did or you did?
Maybe both of us. I'm not really sure, but I'm really happy to be here, and hopefully the fans enjoy what we put out.
Well, you've made the final round before. This time, let's hope you pull it out.
Thank you very much.
Still looking to win one.
So John Martin moves into the final round, and who will he face? Will it be Mike Dunn or the Snake Don Perdome? The other half of the semifinal round ready on the line.
We've seen a lot of tire smoke, Don Garlett, in the near lane. You can see Mike Dunn is over in the far lane where Perdome put him. What do you think on lane choice here? What would you have done based on what you've seen?
I believe I would have gone to the far lane, Steve, because that seems to be where the best runs have been made.
Okay, there you see they have marked the burnout track so that they get the car back exactly where it ought to be. The burnout is a waste of time and fuel if you don't do it properly and get them right back where they ought to be.
Yeah, you can tell they have to have that chalk out there. You can hardly see those burnout tracks from the previous round because all of the track is so black.
And believe it or not, over 15 gallons of fuel being sucked up by these supercharged engines in, what, about a minute and a half? Just hard to believe you can put that much fuel through a motor.
To give you an idea how much that is, Steve, if you had 4 shower heads in your shower, it still would be enough fuel to feed one of these motors when it's under power.
All right, the final round is on the line. Who is going to race John Martin? Don Perdome, 4-time Winston champion. Mike Dunn, Southern Nationals winner this year. They're both having traction problems, but Perdome has more of them than Mike Dunn. It is Mike Dunn, a smoky 583. That'll cost him lane choice at 254 miles per hour.
As we watch the replay, you see the Snake smokes real hard. Dunn smokes a little bit, but he backpedals. Now remember, I said he's the last driver left in drag racing, and he's working hard right there to win this race, and win it he does.
So Mike Dunn will move on to the final round. We take a look at the pairings. John Martin will face Dunn, and Martin will have the lane choice. It'll be very important here.
Well, Mike Dunn, a very, very smoky way to get into the final round. And, Mike, I wonder if the transmission-equipped cars like your own aren't a little easier to control when you get into that kind of a tire slippage battle.
Yeah, when I started spinning the tires, like it got down there and it started to settle down, I figured he had the same problem. He was right there. We were kind of going back and forth. And when I put in high gear, it finally settled down, and then I didn't see him again. So it probably did help on a situation like that.
In the meantime, back in Gene Snow's pit, they're working on the machine. At first, they weren't going to tear the motor down, but Gene Snow said, no, we're in the final.
Finalists in Top 2 120 car. Now it's time to do the same thing in Pro Stock. Burnouts are completed. This is Joel Fulgore, the black and yellow Trans Am, up against in the near lane, the yellow and white Chevy Beretta and Bruce Allen. One of the two goes to the finals, the other goes home.
And Bruce Allen has been looking real strong here today, so he's going to be tough to beat.
Absolutely, having one of his best days in a long time, but so then is Joe Fulgore. It is Fulgore away first. But his advantage doesn't last long. The smile on the face of David Rear says it all. At 7:45 wins it for Bruce Allen in the Rear and Morrison Beretta, 184 miles per hour. Fulgore at 7.58. Big Daddy?
What a brilliant start Fulgore made at the starting line, but it didn't last long with the power that the Allen car was making as he picked it right up and by half track was already ahead of him.
Bruce Allen on the near side drifted over toward that line, but this is a car that is really making horsepower, and he drove away from Fulgore 184.5 miles an hour through the traps. Let's go to the far end.
When last we saw this man, he pronounced that this car would be perfect for the semifinals. Is a 7:45 near perfect?
That's not bad. That's about as good as it's going to do today. That was a big improvement there. They scraped the starting line. That made it a little bit better for us. We just got down through there a lot better. Making a run makes all the difference. I mean, when I say that, I'm clarifying, you know, making a nice, smooth run. That makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. You only need one more.
Yeah. Take it.
All right, that's Joe Fulgore headed back to the pits in defeat, and that's Bruce Allen with a lot of confidence.
Well, the heat is still a factor, and lane choice is still critical. So now, who will Bruce Allen meet? Will it be this man, Larry Morgan, as he comes up to face one of the best guys on the starting line in the business, and that, of course, is none other than Butch Leal.
And we have asked Butch Leal so many times, why are you so consistently good? And he can't even explain it. It's just the communication he has between his head, his foot, and that electronic device known as the Christmas tree. Leal is staged. Finally, Morgan moves in. Morgan took his time, but still it's Leal with the advantage.
Well, Morgan had the lane choice. He chose the near lane, but the other lane is working out for Leal. Leal again got the hole shot. Comes through with a victory with a 7:49 to a losing 7:52.
As we watch the replay, it's just like that. Leal was a mechanical device. He hardly is ever second out of the gate.
Look how far down track these cars carry the front wheels, especially Leal. They're up on the wheelie bars. The driver's just hoping they go straight until they make that shift into second gear. About midway through second, they'll set them down. Now you can steer it with a steering wheel instead of just raw courage.
And with Leal's victory over Larry Morgan, the stage is now set for the final rounds in all categories. In Pro Stock, it will be Bruce Allen facing Butch Leal, and Allen will have the all-important lane choice. Let's go to the far end.
Well, guys, for the first time in a long time, the two golfing buddies get together in the final round of Pro Stock. Bruce Allen and you, Butch Leal. He will have lane choice. Your 7:49 didn't quite match his 45.
Well, he made a very great run. I looked at it as I was back running Larry there, and I knew it was he made a great run, and I was just hoping that we could get down the right lane, and we did a pretty good job, and I'm just glad to be in the final, Steve. It's been a while, and I'm sure the crew is real happy, and so am I.
I don't have to tell our regular fans, I don't have to tell Bruce Allen that you'll try to leave on him to make up that difference.
Well, Bruce has found something in the clutch, and he's really hitting good lights, and I'm going to have to work real hard, and
Might have to work real hard and get a clutch like his after this race, but he's doing an excellent job, and we do a lot of talking about that as we play golf. Just on leaving, and he's a real good friend of mine, and but as soon as these switches turn, the friendship's over, and we try to get to the other end.
Well put. Butch Leal, he goes to the finals.
His first final round of this season. Meanwhile, back in John Martin's pit, Bob Brooks massages a piston, ready to put it in Martin's engine. We're back at the NHRA Citgo Cajun Nationals, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And in Frank Hawley's pit, they work on the clutch, they work on the motor, as they are ready to face Gene Snow in the final round of Top Fuel. In the meantime, a little bit earlier, Steve Evans took a look at the sportsman classes.
We talk about dominant cars in the professional categories of drag racing. Kenny Bernstein comes to mind. Bob Glidden, of course, in Pro Stock. Well, there's a dominant car in the sportsman category of top alcohol funny car. From Washington State, it is Pat Austin. This car and driver have won 18 NHRA championship events. For the second year in a row, they carry the #1, the Winston champions in '87 and '88. It looks exactly like a nitro funny car, but there's a lot of differences. A 2-speed transmission, no nitro obviously allowed in the tank, a lot of rules and regulations that these guys have to live up to. Pat Austin again made a final round here at the Cajun Nationals. Did he make it 19? Well, let's have a look at that race and also the rest of the sportsman categories.
There's Pat Austin on the near side. Some of the biggest engines in drag racing, but a great big red light. Very unusual situation for a long-term veteran like Pat Austin. Gary Rattel took the win.
And it was his first ever victory in NHRA Championship drag racing. A very, very happy man was Gary Rattel. Anytime you beat, well, a legend in the category like Pat Austin, it brings about moments like this. So Gary Rattel was the top alcohol winner. Early today, Bill Barney clinched the top alcohol dragster title. Kurt Steinbach was victorious in competition eliminator. Elijah Boyd, likewise in Superstock. In stock, well, it was Grant Lewis taking the prize. In Supergas, Ed DeStout. In Supercomp, Robert Turner. Our congratulations to all of those sportsman winners. All in all, over 500 race cars have competed here over the 3 days of the Citgo Cajun Nationals. And now it is time for the Pro Stock final round.
Bruce Allen, that white and yellow machine on the near side, ready to face Butch Leal. Now, remember that Allen has the lane choice here, so he's chosen the near side. Hot day, a track that has been questionable. Choices have moved back and forth on these lanes, Don Garlis.
Lane choice is not near as important in Pro Stock as it is the fuel classes, and I think that Leo is going to rely on his reaction time to try to beat Allen.
And I think Bruce Allen told us in his semifinal interview what he wants to do, and the key here is to make a smooth run. They all talk about the shake, the car getting out of shape. We've seen the Pro Stocks moving around more than they normally do, and that's a scary feeling in this kind of an automobile. Bruce Allen near lane. Leal is away first, but not by much. What a Pro Stock final. Bruce Allen out-muscles Butch Leal. 7:45 to a losing 7:51. The whole shot for Leal, well, it just wasn't quite enough.
Well, you boys did it again.
Yeah, we're real happy. We needed this one. Last time we won was last year down here. We've been working real hard and done a lot of testing this winter, and it's starting to pay off.
Well, you ran real good and consistent. That's what it takes.
Yeah, well, we finally figured out a little bit on the clutch, I guess, and dropped out of the 50s down into the 40s, and that's what made the difference.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Don.
Hey, this is our lucky track. We've had all kind of problems down here from time to time, and we end up just winning this race, and just a lucky place for us. We love it down here.
Great.
Say one more thing. Bruce just did a tremendous job of driving today. Thanks.
So a repeat victory for Bruce Allen here at the Cajun Nationals. Now, you see that Butch Leal got away first, but we're talking some superlative power in that machine on the near lane. And it was Bruce Allen that was able to just overpower and outspeed Butch Leal and come to the finish line first and pick up a victory here at the Cajun Nationals in Baton Rouge. Let's go to the far end now. Here's Steve Evans.
From the very beginning of the day, when we first talked to Bruce Allen, you could kind of see the Cajun Nationals logo in your eyes. This was your race.
You believe it? Oh, man, I'm happy. That's great.
Lots of power.
Yeah, Buddy and Dave done wonders with the car today. You could tell for the first 2 runs we weren't doing too good, and they got the car working good. I can't say enough about them. The experience of knowing what to do makes all the difference in the world. I'm glad this old Levi Garrett Chevrolet finally pulled us through to a race. Butch
Leal, the payback here may not come on the drag strip. It may come on the golf links tomorrow. He's liable to beat your brains out, Butch.
Well, I tell you one thing. They were really, Rear Morrison team with Bruce driving today did a great job, and I did the best I could. And right in the middle, he just took off on me. And I'm just glad to be in the final with Bruce today. And we'll get him to come next Wednesday at the golf course.
He beat me here I won last year. The year before that, he beat me in the final. So we get down here occasionally.
Bruce Allen earned this one all the way, all the day.
Bruce Allen takes the win in Pro Stock. Still the final rounds in Funny Car and Top Fuel coming up as Mike Dunn is getting ready back in the staging lanes. We'll be back for the
about to be decided. It's Funny Car Eliminator here at the NHRA Citgo Cajun Nationals. I'm Steve Evans along with Paul Page, Big Daddy Don Garlett, and that is Mike Dunn, the world's fastest funny car driver. He holds the NHRA record at 280 miles per hour, but it's elapsed times that win drag races, Don.
That's right, and John Martin is going to be facing him, and believe it or not, Martin comes into this round with lane choice.
That's right, he has not overpowered the racetrack or had any mechanical problems as so many people have had.
Well, the temperatures have been absolutely critical here today, and some of the abuse the lanes have taken because of the temperatures makes those decisions very, very difficult. And Martin has decided on the far lane.
The reason for that is two very important cars in the previous round, and Funny Car smoked over in the near lane.
That's right, and I think Mike Dunn right now is glad he has a car that is not on autopilot. He can do some things if it loses traction.
That's exactly right, Steve. He has the only funny car in the field that the driver can actually change a decision down course. All the others are automatic. The driver does nothing but put the pedal on the wood, and all of the timers take care of everything. But Dunn is actually making decisions going down track.
And if he has to, he can kind of pussyfoot, baby that car off the starting line. You can't do it with an automatic car because it's going all the way down with the pedal that activates all the clutch sequences. Look at Mike Dunn. He is running away with it. John Martin with mechanical problem. Mike Dunn becomes the first repeat winner, really, of this season at 5.63 seconds, 268 miles per hour.
Well, still no Nationals victory for John Martin, but nevertheless, he was in the final round. Let's go to Don Garlett on the start line.
Well, it looks like it paid off staying with it. Yeah, we just did what we had to do.
Long, hot day for Gary Slusser, but they got the job done with Mike Dunn's victory. Well, let's take one more look at the final run in Funny Car. Martin on the far side, Dunn on the near side, and you can see almost immediately something wrong with Martin's car. And Mike Dunn, of course, is aware of that as well, as he just powers right down to the far end. No problems whatsoever. And Mike Dunn scores the win here at Baton Rouge.
Well, there it is, the face of the only driver in NHRA drag racing this year to win 2 titles. Mike Dunn, great job. A smart race.
Yeah, it felt good. We got a few breaks, and we just took one race at a time. We didn't want to beat ourselves, and it's still pretty hard to do. We try not to make any mistakes. Crew chief Gary Slusher and Joe Paisano, they did a good job. I mean, this crew, we don't give up. I mean, we'll go as hard as we can, whatever it takes to win the race.
You told me before you went to the line that you hopped the car up, even though you smoked the tires around before, and I don't understand that logic.
Well, we had a problem making it through the transition in the right lane. We could not make it through there. So we decided to hop it up and give it a little break. And I just held a little break, and we figured it would run probably decent enough to win the race if he didn't step up a whole bunch. And basically that's what it did.
And you've won a lot of Winston points, even though you said early on that you're not in this full tour. The points you're getting, maybe you ought to be.
Well, yeah, I think now maybe Joe, he might have the hook in a little deeper this time. And then I think we'll be running more races, and that'll be good. With the JP1 Oldsmobile and all our sponsors, Valvoline, all the ones you see here, it's good. And I want to say hi to my little girl Samantha and Sandy, and Daddy will be able to buy some more presents, and we'll be okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mike Dunn.
Well, Mike Dunn already has a few of the dollars spent, and definitely very happy with that victory. One more race to run. The final in Top Fuel as Gene Snow is ready to face Frank Hawley.
And what you see in the atmosphere, that is not tire smoke, Don Garlett. That looks like raw fuel.
The tremendous amount of fuel coming out of Hawley's car over here in the near lane.
And there is Frankie Paisano. The celebration continues down at the far end with our Funny Car winner, Mike Dunn. What a champion that young man is. And you know, back in California, his family getting a big kick out of this victory, except his grandmother, who always says, Mike, get your hair cut before you're on TV again. What about the fuel problem here, Big Daddy?
Well, there's something definitely wrong. They're fiddling around with it, looking in here. Oops, Bill Walter throws his hands up. That's a bad sign. That means like the race is over. Something mechanical has went wrong with his car. Even the crew chief for Gene Snow recognizes the problem.
That's right. Chris Eckert looked over there and saw, but wait a minute, they're going to stage the Hawley car. What do you think, Don? Just stage and hope something bad happens to Snow?
Hope Snow red lights or something goes wrong over there and they could just coast down and win, but I don't think they're figuring on running this car all the way.
What a frustrated driver Frank Hawley must be. He may not even be sure what's wrong, but he steps in the middle and nothing happens, just raw fuel. There goes Gene Snow. Oh, my. Hawley would have been hard-pressed to beat another 5:16. 268.41 miles per hour for the top fuel champion, and there is Frank Hawley in defeat.
5:16 on the final. What can you say?
There is nothing. That was excellent. Excellent. We're so happy. The crew did such a good job. We had the help of Clayton Harris the last couple rounds. We really needed it. It's going to be a real morale for us, Booster. It's just excellent.
Well, you put on a real good show here today, and the people enjoyed it.
Well, I hope so. We try. I mean, we spend as much time and effort as we can doing this. I mean, that's what we do.
Are you happy when Gene said, take it apart and look at it?
That didn't bother me. It just the clutch deal, it was time to take it apart and service it. And I was afraid it'd take some extra time. But it didn't, so everything was fine.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chris Eckert, nice young man. Don, when we take a look at the replay here, what do you think happened?
Well, the boost went away on Hawley's car. They lost the blower drive pulley on the bottom and sheared the center out of it. It was still turning slowly, but not fast enough to make any boost. So when Hawley stepped on the throttle, there was no manifold pressure, just raw fuel, allowing Gene Snow to go to victory.
Gene Snow is well known in this sport as an innovator. Translate that into tinkerer. If he runs 5:16, he wants to run 3:16. The crew handcuffed him in the trailer. Don't change a thing, right? It paid off.
I have been known to change a few things, but this baby was giving me such good runs and stuff that I couldn't resist. We left it alone.
Tell me about the run itself. By the way, it duplicated 5:16.
Did it really? 5:16? That's really, really good. The guys worked real hard. Chris Eckert, my crew chief, as you guys all know, has done a real good job keeping it consistent. My sponsors, and everything's worked out real good. This boy didn't think he could win one. Here it is. We've done it.
You did a heck of a job in the computer room telling them what to do.
Well, it works out good. It's a team effort. I guess that's the name of the game.
Can you still win the championship?
I don't know. We need to win about 6 or 7 of them. I hope this is a start.
We did too. Gene Snow, the Cajun Nationals champ.
So our congratulations to Gene Snow and all the winners at the Cajun Nationals. I'm Paul Page for Steve Evans and Don Garlitz. So long from Louisiana.
The executive producer for American Sports Cavalcade is Harvey M. Palish. Produced and directed by John V. Mullen. Promotional consideration provided for and a fee paid by the Style Auto World Championship Team. The nation's premier source of fast lane fashions, Style Auto, the champion's choice for the style of your life. And by this special offer from Diamond P.
Just incredible. You know, for 6 award-winning seasons on American Sports Cavalcade, we've shared the excitement as fearless competitors push too far. Yet, miraculously, we've watched them walk away. Diamond P has now captured all this excitement on a spectacular new home video called And They Walked Away. The mayhem of motocross, the tumbles of sprint cars, the spins of stock cars, 60 minutes of breathtaking footage. For your copy, call 1-800-453-9300 or send a check or money order to this address. Just $24.95 plus $3.50 shipping and handling. Visa and MasterCard accepted. Call 1-800-453-9300 now.
The American Sports Cavalcade is a presentation of Diamond V Sports.